Sure.
All right, we're recording. I guess we could call this a kind of an offshoot of the Six Borough podcast. It's number 2 of today.
Yeah.
I'm here with Eric Uresk. This is the third time. Only
Fourth
first time in the middle of a pandemic, though. Virtual one.
This is the fourth time. We have the one unreleased episode.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the one that could never see the light of day.
No, the one that'll hurt some people's future political aspirations, and then
it can hurt a lot of things. although maybe now not as much after what's going on. Who knows?
Yeah, it might not matter anymore.
Yeah. So before I hit record, I was asking Eric because I got my little mask on. It's kind of my little dig at the current state of affairs in the world. Eric's over in California. There's no mandatory mask order over there, huh?
Not that I know of. LA might be different. That would be a city order. So we're in San Diego. I don't believe there's a state order because I've been out without a mask numerous times and hasn't been any issues. Some stores are mandating that you have some kind of face covering before you go in. I don't hate the idea of covering your face if for the fact that it stops you from whatever, breathing on other people, I suppose, or if it stops any of the fluids coming from your mouth or nose, I suppose, it's more about you keeping your shit to yourself from what I understand. So I don't have a problem with that. I don't think it protects you from per se getting sick from anybody else. But I mean, if we limit our transfer of fluids, I mean, I could play ball on that, I suppose.
My problem with it is more that it's mandated. I'm not into the force. I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I just don't like the idea that here we are now, 5 weeks later.
Yeah.
And when we're supposed to be closer to loosening restrictions, they seem to be getting tighter, and it feels like maybe this should have been something that was instituted a while ago, and there seems to be some divide on whether or not it's even effective because this is acceptable as per the mandate, but this actually doesn't stop the spread of the pathogen. So I don't understand the efficacy of it. Granted, I'm not a scientist, but what I've read,
I think like your droplets from your saliva, from your nose are a little bit less able to transmit into the air or surface around you with the covering of your face.
There's only certain masks that actually prevent the small molecules from passing through in respiration, based on my understanding. Now, again, disclaimer: this is bro science from a guy who grew a mustache during this whole thing.
It could just be like just a pacification for some people to make people feel better about going out in public slowly. Like if it's a trade-off between being able to maybe open things up, but you have to go out covered. I mean, I don't like either of them. I don't like mandates on anything. So it's such a tricky topic because I'm smart enough to know that I don't know shit. You know what I mean? So like and I was extremely resistant to the whole thing in the beginning. Like I was sort of laughing the thing off as, okay, this is going to be the next thing that kills everybody. Because I mean, at least a few times a year we get knee-jerk reaction media. I mean, a couple of months ago we were going to have World War III with Iran. That lasted a week, and like people really thought we were going to have World War III with Iran, and how somehow it was actually a threat to us. So I mean, that was the latest thing that was going to end the world, and then this came along, and we've had these pandemic scares a million times, and some people are unfortunate and they do pass away from these things, but these are regular occurrences. And so I avoid knee-jerk reactions, and so I really resisted playing ball until I started being forced to. And I think the first 2 weeks into the shutdown wasn't so bad. It was a nice welcome break for me, actually. And then as things started to go on and people are staying home more and more, it's like if I go across my Facebook timeline in particular, it is a cesspool of just fear. And I look at both sides, and my natural tendency is to definitely just let people make their own way in life. And I definitely don't want the government interfering with my life. I'm not one of those people that thinks that there's never a reason for government mandates. I think sometimes the government does need to oversee certain things. We could get into a large debate on what, that's because what things is necessary and what things is not. But okay, and looking all that, I was so sure that this was bullshit and that we should do everything, that people should just do what they want. And but I'm not so sure about my opinions right now because I don't know. It's really hard to get good information. Because what I want this to not be a big deal, right? That's what I want. Deep down, I want this to be, okay, we're all worrying about nothing. And why do I want that? So I can get back to work and get back to my normal life, right? So there's a part of me that doesn't want to believe that this is real. And it's made even easier to want to believe that because of the fact that this virus is like set up perfectly for the circumstances that we're now getting. It's like the perfect divisive virus because most people won't even know they have it. Some people will get a little sick. Some people will get really sick, and a minute amount of those people will lose their life and die.
It's the perfect tinfoil virus, right?
It is literally like the perfect thing to divide a people. Because if there was a virus and everybody was getting deathly ill, dog, my house would be fucking saran wrapped and I'd be inside and fucking waiting it out, right?
What I keep thinking about is that this would be about 1 million times worse if children were being affected, and rightfully so. If you had parents that had to worry about their kids getting sick, there wouldn't be no debate. There would be no questioning. Nobody wants kids to suffer and get sick, but because kids are basically asymptomatic, I think about that often. If it was affecting kids and kids were dying, especially in mass, we wouldn't even be debating this. And you're right. You're right about what you're saying, and I agree. I want it to be not an issue either, and it's hard to get real facts. My thing, and from the start, I said that, like, I understand you have a certain level. Everybody has a certain level of social responsibility, right? Like, even though I believe in personal freedoms, we are all humans. We are all members of society, and you have some level of social responsibility, right? Because one bad apple can spoil the bunch. One person can spread the virus far. One person can cause mayhem and set off a chain of events of catastrophes for a large number of people, right? So, in the beginning, and to a certain degree, I feel like I've lived up to my social responsibility here. And we're 5 weeks deep. We're 5 weeks deep. And a lot of what is coming out, even though it's hard to sift through bullshit, seems like most people are asymptomatic and are not affected. And you and I have discussed this, not in this way, but we've talked throughout this whole thing, and we both have kind of agreed that it's hard to make that bargain for so long, to tell possibly 80% of people to make a large sacrifice for about what we end up 0.1% or 0.01%. And this study that just came out yesterday, as of yesterday, a study from Stanford, and Stanford is a legitimate source. It's one of the most well-respected medical schools in America, let alone the country. I mean, let alone the world. They did an antibody test, and the antibody test came back larger than they expected. They said over 80% of the population tested positive for these antibodies, which means more people, since they have not been tested, most people have not been tested, more people tested positive with these antibodies who have not been tested, which means a larger percentage of the population has probably been exposed, had no symptoms, which drives the amount infected up and the death rate way down.
Right. And then I'll read those tests. And so here's where I get mind fucked is I'll read those articles, and then I'll see people, but what test did they use? Was it a reliable test? And like people, even science people, like, they're using language I don't necessarily understand. But the gist of what I get is that they're questioning the method used, right? And so just to step back a little bit
too.
Right. So just to step back a little bit, and we can both do that all day as well. Do I trust your method? Right. and I think that's encouraging news. And those kind of led to my beliefs. My beliefs were along those lines in the first place. That this had been here a lot longer than we had anticipated or judged earlier. But so you feel the same way I do. Like you want this to be a not such a big a deal. Do you find yourself looking for information to strengthen your own bias? Because I do.
Of course. I would be a liar if I said I didn't. But I do my best to try to mitigate against that as well. Like I'm not so ignorant that I'm not aware of my own.
So how many people do you think, and I was gonna put up a post and kind of just take a poll of people's opinions, but I just didn't want the fucking hysterical shitstorm that would accompany it. Like, how many of us, when we're looking to inform ourselves, right, and especially about something that's so sort of, could be volatile like this, right? When we look for information, how many of us are even aware that we're looking to confirm our bias?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure how many people are. I think more people would rather be correct.
Yeah, I think more people would rather confirm their emotion and be right. And so at least while I'm aware of what I'm doing, I will also do the opposite and try to get a legitimate source. I think the problem for me as a person who's libertarian in nature and generally pretty socially liberal, but more of a libertarian, freedom-loving person, when I look for, and generally it seems like libertarians and people that have more of a lean towards the right politically want their freedoms valued a little bit more. And the more left-leaning seem to be, wanting stay home, and if you don't stay home, you're a piece of shit. And so, yeah. And so when I start looking for information to combat my own prejudice, right, it's just littered with these, outrage and just telling everybody how horrible they are for disagreeing with them, or you're a science denier, or if you agree with this, you're a fucking Trump guard.
Yeah, there's a advocate of every position, and it makes it muddy as fuck.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult to sort through that. It's like, it's next to impossible to find dialogue going on either side, really, right? So there's the one side that's like, oh, you're all sheep. That's like, maybe that could be right, or they're just afraid, Look, everybody's afraid right now, right? It's just what you're afraid of, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Fear, everybody knows fear is the easiest currency to trade on for control.
But we're all afraid.
Yeah.
Right? So you and I aren't afraid of getting sick, and we're not really probably too afraid of our loved ones getting sick because we're emotionally crippled and we had bad childhoods.
Well, honestly, my father and my mother give less of a fuck than I do, honestly.
Right.
My dad,
I'm just there, but
well, you're not wrong either on that, but
right, yeah. So like, we're looking at it from that standpoint, but what we are afraid of is losing our freedom.
Right.
Yeah. Which is just as big of, you could tell me that that's not important and that your, obscure fucking relative is very important. Not to me, it's not, right? I'm sure to you it's very important, and I'll grant you that that's important to you. I think where this gets dicey is like, where do we draw the line on what's important to who, right? And so if somebody was to come up to me in a parking lot and say, hey man, I know I don't know you, but if you stay home this month, I don't have to die, right? To be honest, man, I might stay home for that person. I probably like, and if I knew this to be true, right? And if I knew this to be true in some obscure reality, right? Some crazy reality where I knew, all right, for whatever reason, this guy's life depends on me staying home. Once he starts asking me to stay home for 2 months and 3 months and start to put my life, my livelihood, and the people that I have to take care of and the people that I'm responsible to, once that starts to get put in jeopardy for a longer period of time, I can no longer be in agreement with that, right? Because at what point does one person's existence trump another person's existence or quality of existence?
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at about, like, we all have a level of social responsibility that I'm aware of, right? You know, so, and you can relate that to this just on a larger scale. Like you said, if somebody came up to you in a parking lot, that analogy is scaling this down to a very personal relationship, right? Where it's like you have a very vivid connection to this person.
Yeah.
I know this person, and I know if I don't do this, I affected this person's life, and that's like, that will weigh heavy on you. 8 billion people in the world, it's hard to put a face, and that's a number that doesn't make sense. You know, what you can only make tangible, like you said, are loved ones, and everybody makes tangible their loved ones, and they're the most important things to them, and rightfully so. I get it. But like you said, at what point does the value system start to skew, and who assigns the value, right?
Yeah, exactly.
At what point is your 90-year-old grandma who may pass away in the next 5 to 10 years anyway more valuable than my economic rights and liberties and the economic hole that I'm going to have to dig out of in the next 30 years for the rest of my life?
Right. So we have the right, like, to the pursuit of freedom and happiness, right? To each person has that right to pursue life, liberty.
And as a disclaimer, that shouldn't, I agree, and I think you do, my right to that shouldn't come at the cost or harm of somebody else, right? I agree to the principle.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree to that too. It's just, yeah, I think it's very, and I think a little bit of understanding both ways would go far into settling down the fucking shittiness that people have towards each other, which is, it's like, it's really difficult for me to.
I'm definitely guilty of it too. I've been guilty of having some shittiness.
I'm guilty of it, and I've been guilty of it during this. But what I'm starting to do is I don't find it helpful, and I'm starting to see it as
Eric, hold on a second. Let me get this dog out. I don't know if you guys can hear that dog. Hold on.
Yeah, get over here. Hold on.
We got quarantine quarrels. I got 2 dogs here getting after it. You know, it's like. Hey, you fucking psychos! All right, go ahead. Sorry.
I hope you're going to edit this. So yeah, what I was saying is, so have I been shitty to at least in my head towards people? Absolutely. What I started to come to realize is that's definitely not who I want to be. And when I'm being shitty towards people, it's for one reason. I'm positive of my stance on something, and I'm trying to like reaffirm my stance and a sense of superiority. And anybody can do that on any stance that they take, is dig your heels in and try to gain a stronghold and sort of some superiority towards others. Well, you're a fucking idiot if you believe this. Like, whenever people do that, it literally, you just like, you've got blinders on when you're doing that. And the minute I think that I'm absolutely sure or right on something is when I believe that a fool does that. You know what I mean? Like, the wisest people I know are wise because they're kind of not sure of themselves, and they know that they're not sure of themselves. They just like, they kind of go off their experience on things, and it's more, this is what I think, you know, and this is the opinion that I've drawn. I could be wrong, right? They leave an opening to inform themselves or to be proven wrong. Whenever I'm absolutely sure of something, especially with something that it's really hard to get hard evidence and facts on, and that we know so little about, man, I'm weary of people like that. And I got to be weary of myself when I do that.
Well, so let me ask you a question then, because this is where I'm at right now currently. Like I said, these are all valid points, and I don't disagree with you. And I think, like I said, we all have a measure of social responsibility to some degree. And you and I both are in agreement about 2 things, right? We are worried about our loss of freedom, and we value that probably to the highest level. And we also, like we talked about before, about the assumption of risk. So for me, let me clarify my stance then before I propose this. My stance, I agree with you on what you're saying. I'm not saying, I don't know that I'm right. I would like to be. I would like to be, yes.
I'm just saying that in reference of being shitty to people.
No, I know what you're saying. I agree. And listen, I've been probably guilty of being shitty with my own opinions. I don't think I've been shitty to other people, but I've let my own opinions maybe make me come off shitty in my opinions, but not to other people. I don't want to be shitty to other people. You know what I mean? I am hard-headed. I have my opinions on things, and I think that's, you and I are very similar like that. And most fighters are, right? You know, you got to have some type of headstrong thing to make you do stuff like that. But my biggest thing is this: the thing that probably made me probably dive into my opinions when I started to see, I was kind of lukewarm about all this until I started to see the encouragement of reporting people for not adhering to social.
My man Boogie just got a ticket for recording material at his gym.
Yeah, I posted about it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so Governor Cuomo went on TV about this face mask thing and encouraged people to, like, hey, if you see somebody out without a mask, you should say something. What? Yeah. And like, there's a thing with in New York City, de Blasio put out a thing like, how do you report people not following social distancing? Text this number, take a screenshot. I cannot. That is something where I will be eternally shitty on. I cannot support that. Whatever your thought process is, whether you want to stay home, I get that, and you're entitled to that opinion, and I don't think you're wrong for wanting that or valuing what you value. I don't think that my values override your values, and I should try to convince you out of your values. But to be so superior in your value system that you're going to go out and report people for not adhering to your value system, I think is fucked. And that's kind of what that is to me.
Well, man, I mean, it's the perfect storm is to put people at a choice of their freedoms and liberties, or, you know, their emotional connection to their loved ones. And it's like, and some of us value one or the other a little bit more. I know that I lack compassion, and that also that I'm entitled, right? So, you know,
I think we both share that to some degree.
I naturally have a disdain for authority of all forms, and I generally do what I want to do regardless, whether it's legal or not. Usually doesn't, you know, legality generally doesn't play into the factor of whether I want to do something, whether I'm going to do it or not, right? I have my system of right and wrong, and it's not based on legality.
It doesn't impact decision-making at all.
No. And that's not, I'm not trying to be like a badass or a criminal or anything like that, but I have my, yeah, it's a little, okay. So I know that. And so knowing that, so are my opinions bound to be skewed that way because of my lack of compassion, my entitlement, and my disdain for authority? Well, yeah. So I should look around the areas where I'm weak, you know, or maybe weak's not the right word, but the areas where I lack a little bit, and see if perhaps I could find some information that, while it's not my natural tendency, it may put things in a different light. But I think these people, they're so sure that by staying home, this is going to work. And I mean, I don't know. The thing is, they can go and get evidence of it. I don't know if it's hard evidence. It's really hard for me to fact check. Like, I'm not an academic or a scholar where I can filter information adequately. What I can do is, when I'm presented with information that I trust, I'm able to make, you know, solid decisions. But some of these people are so sure that by doing this, they're doing the right thing. And that if you're not doing this, you're doing the wrong thing. Like, they're sure of it. They believe it as it's almost like a deity for them, right? It's a religious belief for them now. And fuck, man, it is. I think that's dangerous, but I also get where they're coming from. Like, they believe their life is on the line, and that the planet's life is on the line. For me personally, I'm not alarmed at the numbers, you know?
Well, hold on. I don't know that we're so sure of that. Do you know what I mean? I don't know that you can assign that belief system to everybody that does that. You know what I mean? I don't know that everybody that does that feels that way or believes that. Some people on both sides of the coin. People like you and I, or people on that side of the coin, are also just cunts.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of cunts out there for
You know
sure.
what I mean? Like I would be careful going in going and assigning that's the motivating factor behind people doing those things. I don't know that they're all, every single one of them is a large number of people like that.
Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Just to give them a little bit of favor in the argument, right? Let's give them the benefit that they are sure, right? I think it's dangerous to be. My point is, I just think it's dangerous to be that sure about something that no one seems to be sure about. Do you know what I mean?
I 100% agree with you on that. I don't disagree with you at all about that. So all right. So now that all right, we've established
the opposite. The opposite of that is if you're out at a protest, like standing next to 50 people at a protest. It's like, that looks real bad, man. You know what I mean? Like, you look stupid, I think. If you're out like thousands deep in a protest right now, I don't know that that's the way to get your message across.
I don't either, but at the same time, I wonder if that's a consequence of we assigned for the benefit of the doubt, these people are so sure that what they believe is right, and now this is a consequence of the pushback of like, well, you're so sure. Here comes the
I think those people would have been sure anyway. You know what I mean? Those people would have been sure anyway. This is just probably a bit of a lashing out, but
I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a lashing out, and I think it's also, here we are now at 5 weeks, and people are realizing like their livelihood and their freedoms and their ability to live are on the line here. And I don't think that that's something to minimize either. I don't think you can minimize that either. You know, like, just like you shouldn't minimize another person's life, I don't think you should minimize the impact on somebody who may survive this life. I think they're both should be weighed. And again, it comes, I think the conversation now becomes, here we are 5 weeks deep. There's valid points on both sides. And for me, right now, at this point in time, April 18th, 5 weeks into a quarantine, it becomes a matter of what we've discussed, assumed risk, right? How much risk is there in your general life to begin with? Now, there's a lot of information to parse through about how much risk we are at right now with this current disease. It's muddy water. It's hard to tell. But 5 weeks in, there's a lot of people who I feel are willing to take that assumed risk. And so I've thought about this from a standpoint of, if I was the person in charge, and thankfully I'm not, but if this was in my lap and I was the governor of New York, and this was, I had to come up with a solution here to satisfy both sides of this debate. If I look at this 5 weeks in, we built up infrastructure around dealing with this pandemic. We propped up and built infrastructure around reinforcing our hospitals. We put legislation and executive orders in place for social distancing to combat this, to flatten the curve. 5 weeks in, the curve is starting to flatten. And now there's a lot of people that are getting restless, and people that are worried about impingement of their liberties, that are worried about getting back to work, that are worried about their economic livelihood going forward. They're worried about the debt they're incurring. They're worried about their businesses going under. You got to look at it at both sides. So it's like, okay, what actually is a quarantine? A quarantine is actually isolation of sick people, not healthy people.
Yes.
So you take the healthy people that are willing to assume a certain level of risk, and how do you get these people back into life to some degree? So what I would do is take the infrastructure that we have in place and reassign it, and take that infrastructure to quarantine people that are at risk, that maybe don't have the means necessary. You give them the means to quarantine themselves. The rest of the people that maybe have the means and the assistance to be effectively quarantined at home, do that. Continue to practice that. You have that choice to make. Even if you're healthy and you don't feel safe yet, okay, stay home, shelter in place. You're worried about going back to work in your workplace, make that executive order to keep you safe from retribution from your employer. If you are sick, you're out of work immediately for 1 week without effective retribution from your employer. So that, hey, listen, you're a business, you want to get back to work. You have to maybe bite this bullet at this point, where you have some people that might be out. You can't affect them, but would you rather that or go under?
Sure.
Right.
I think that's fairly practical and a pragmatic response, and that's
And I don't know that is what I'm saying seems logical. Logic and real world application could be different. So I'm not saying that I know that this is the
problem is when you look at something like that, which seems reasonable and rational until you see like, you'll get people posting like bodies are just stacked at hospitals. Like, I don't know that I believe that, or that, and I think you were the one that told me if they are stacked, it's because the morgues are scared to pick them up. And like a lot of people are scared to catch the virus from but anyway, you're just going to get sensationalized reports one way or the other. Right. And because like, if there's going to be a lot of things that need to be looked at as far as like changing them. And I hate to use the word like revolution because it just sounds corny. But the way our news reported is not effective, right? It is horrible. And our government doesn't take care of us, right? So some people feel like our government's taking care of us by forcing a quarantine, but it's not taking care of the people that it's forcing to quarantine. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's taking care of, I suppose, some people that might die from this, right? It's taking care of the 0.1 that would be massively affected by this, and not taking care of the rest of us. Hey man, I will gladly cash that $1,200 check. However, that is a drop in the bucket. That ain't paying my bills, dude. Do you know what I mean?
That's just serving to pacify you for a time period.
Pacifier, but you're not taking care of me. So, okay, you want me to sacrifice for the greater good? You got to take care of us a little better, right? You got to take care of us a little bit better than that. So we're starting to see, like.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think if people have their eyes open, and it goes very much to what you kind of put on social media today. Whatever side of the argument you're on, whoever you're arguing for, don't give a fuck about you.
Yeah, we're not on the team, man.
Yeah, you're probably not on the team. And it's a bit nihilistic, and I suppose, somebody could look at that and say, well, you got to do something, yeah, it begs like, what? Now, what do we do? So what can each person do for themselves? Because it's like relying on the government to do for you. That's not what I want to do. It's like, so what can I do for myself in the meantime?
Well, there's massive evidence inside of what you're saying to support this, right? And look at, like you brought up the stimulus. There's only one person that voted against that stimulus package, and he got panned hard. And now 2 weeks later, the revelations of that stimulus package are coming out, and it doesn't look very good. Like that PPP program, it was capped at $349 billion. In 2 weeks, they ran out of money, man. And like a lot of
giving massive bailouts, like companies that were already making massive profits.
Right. And to hedge funds. And so it came out that some of these, because there wasn't a lot of oversight in it, these corporations and rich people had the means of transferring their personal assets into newly created LLCs and filing a claim and getting $1 million bailouts, essentially. So like that was it was a huge transference of wealth. So it's like, okay, like you said, the government is not taking care of people. And yes, you got to do something, but was what they did to take care of people, or is what they did to take advantage? So it looks like, hey, we did something, you got your $1,200, but really the people in charge don't waste crises. And there's a lot of political posturing in coverage from the media, from politicians. And there's a lot of like financial things going on here where people are jockeying for positions. And more often than not, the people who are arguing, like we're having this conversation about whether you should stay home or be free, or probably getting jerked.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to unpack. And okay, so as attractive as the conspiracy theories are, and there's a lot of them, and some of them are plausible. I don't believe there's a grand conspiracy from America to keep its people inside to take its money. However, you know, as you said, don't waste, a good tragedy. Um, Occam's razor would dictate that, yeah, people will take care of or take advantage of these opportunities when they can. So yeah, dude, there's a people that are a lot smarter than us, in the business and financial world, or a lot more able than we are, that can make these moves, and we can't. Like, can you even get a call back from unemployment at this point? It's like you can't even get in touch with somebody from unemployment, let alone make political moves to get wealth transferred in your favor. So yeah, we're not on the team.
Yeah,
Right?
we're not set up really to benefit from this, and I think that's part of.
Yeah, I don't think it's a grand conspiracy.
Well, I don't think this was engineered or operated. I think this virus is real. I think most of the government was completely unprepared for something like this, and more than likely, as is, like you said, Occam's razor, which comes to human nature, incompetent. So, but like we discussed, there's people are people. Occam's razor, right? So there's going to be bad actors in the political arena and social arena that are going to look to capitalize off things like this. That's just human nature. I don't think it was planned and engineered, but I think it's being capitalized on currently.
So, despite, we could sit here and talk about like our opinions on this all day long, and I would venture to say our opinions don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I mean, some people might find them entertaining, and it's cathartic to get the stuff out with somebody whose opinions I at least respect, right? But I think the more interesting conversation moving forward is, what are you going to do for yourself when the government doesn't take care of you, right? So you're working right now, right? Am I okay? So
yeah,
the financial.
I'm one of the lucky ones who.
Yeah.
I'm still working. I haven't really missed a beat. I'm lucky, and yet here I am still complaining to some degree.
Right.
But
Well, I mean, you're lucky to be working, but it's like, what can you can't do shit with, it's not like your mental health doesn't get affected, or your life isn't affected. I mean, it's definitely cool that you're working. And so like my workload is cut dramatically. Like pretty much I got Jeremy Stevens and Dominic Cruz coming up in a couple weeks, and that's some money in my pocket, getting those guys ready, but it's not what I'd be making normally.
And hey, you got to look at this too. If you were in New York, your ability to make that money might be illegal.
Yeah. 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 So my income's cut dramatically right now. And so I have to make some decisions for myself. And so one of them is like, I got to move out of my place in within, the next 2 weeks, pretty much by May 1st. So,
Why?
my roommate's kid has respiratory issues, so we don't want to put the kid at risk. So we made the decision that we'll try to find another spot to go, just because it's the right thing to do. However I feel about it, I don't want to, I have to go about my life in a certain way that could put him at risk. So we'll probably be getting another place within the next couple of weeks. So it's stressful, right? So like my income's down, and housing will be in question for the next couple of days. However, I'd be lying to say that there's no stress there, but I know I'll end up on my feet, because I always do. So yeah, I have some decisions to make. Like, am I gonna, what's the best thing to do with my family? So, let's say I stay in California. May 1st comes, I'm probably just gonna be working as I normally would, to the best of my ability. Whether the government agrees with that or not, they're not gonna put food on my table. They're not gonna find me a new place to live. They're not going to do any of those things for me. That $1,200 ain't going to cover it, like it's just not going to do it. It's not, my wife is unable to work because she's awaiting her green card process, in which the government's been shut down this whole time. So, like I'm supporting 2 people, off a trainer's salary, which at the moment is cut in half. right?
Right.
So that leaves me with some very real decisions here. Now, is my life in jeopardy right now? No. Do I feel affected by this whole thing? Yes. Who do I feel affected by? Well, I'd be lying if my first reaction wasn't to be angry with weak and sick people, right? That was my first reaction, right? If I didn't have to do this because to take care of you, then I'd just be able to go about my business. But that settled, and that lasted, a short period of time. And so now I'm looking at it as, okay, a large portion of the people believe that it's necessary to do this to protect certain people. I don't necessarily know if that's true or necessarily agree with it, but I have to play ball to some degree, and not, well, I'm being forced to play ball to some degree. Do I like it? No. But so that will leave me to make decisions for myself moving forward, right? If things seem like they aren't going to be sustainable here, I've already talked. My parents said I could just drive to New York and stay with them until things kind of get normal again. And I'm not opposed to that idea either. So like I have options in the air, and I don't bring any of that up as like a woe is me, because I don't feel like that at all. But it's to illustrate like this. If your health's not a concern, the quality of your life might be a very real concern to a lot of us. And dude, I'm not even, some people are in a way worse position than I am, so I find myself pretty lucky. Like, my bills are paid and I have a refrigerator full of food right now. And, I'm able to get a decent amount of activity in throughout the day without, putting anyone at risk or too many people at risk. And, so it's manageable, but yeah, it's scary. So we each got to make our own decisions, because the government's not going to take care of me.
And neither is the person who's on either side of the ball. No one else is going to take care of you.
The people staying home aren't going to take care of me either. Right. And even if this wasn't going on, guess what? It would be the same way.
Right. And that's kind of the larger point, right? Is like, the people, that's why I have to laugh at the people who call you selfish for holding to some ideal of freedom. It's like, hey man, your idea is kind of selfish too, and rightfully so. I get it, right? Like they're both selfish ideals.
I think they're both rightfully so, though.
Right, and they're both rightfully selfish. I'm not saying that one is the other, but it comes down to like the awareness of that, right? Like, yes, I'm selfish because I want my freedom, and you're selfish because you want to protect people you love, rightfully so. But you should realize that it's a little hypocritical when you point a finger at somebody and say it's selfish.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a difficulty getting past their emotions on a particular topic like this. And my greatest wish is like, I hope at least some people that follow my stuff get to watch this podcast, and hopefully we'll put it out as soon as possible. And if we could strip this down to audio, it'd probably be cool too.
I can put it. We'll strip down the audio, and I'll put it on the Sixth Borough, but I'll also publish it.
Yeah, and send it to me because I'll probably publish it to my own shit as well. But I would hope that, if nothing else, people examine that part of this. Like, just see where the other people are coming from, right? Don't have to agree with them, right? But understand where they're coming from. Oh, that's why. Because it's so easy to like anybody, like people that think Trump is a savior. I mean, thanks for the 1,200, dude. Even though I don't know that you did that, or that you have the power to just do that, but you're not going to save me. The people, your enemies, aren't going to save me or help me. Neither of you are going to help me. But I see where you're coming from, and I see what about from where you're coming from. I can see why you support who you support, and I get that's what's important to you, right? I can't force somebody to like value what's important to me more than they value what's important to them. That's fucking crazy, right? But I think it would really cut down on the hysterics the more people could just see where people are coming from.
I fully agree, but I also like So my initial reaction, I had a very fiery, like knee-jerk reaction to the mask mandate, and I got fired up. I'm like, I'm going, man. I'm not wearing the fucking mask, and I'm gonna go somewhere and like let's see the security guard who makes $12 an hour fucking stop me, you know?
Yeah.
And like I had that discussion, and one of my buddies, Yarborough, was like, dude, come on, like you're not gonna do that. Like you're not an asshole, and like why are you gonna go? You don't know the situation that these people are in there. This might be a job that somebody had to take care of their family given the circumstance. Like, you're going to go make their life harder? I'm like, no, you're right. I don't want to do that. And it would be very hypocritical of me to do that because what my ideal is correct and I'm going to go force it on you. Like that would make me like a 2004 era Bush Iraq war. I'm going to go drop freedom bombs and liberate this country. Like, that would make, that would make me a large hypocrite. But that was my initial reaction, right? Like that was my quick.
And I get it,
Yeah. And I sobered up from that stance and shit credit to Yarbrough for like being like, come on, bro, that's not you. And he's absolutely, I don't want to go be a jerk like that. I hold to my ideals of freedom and I do value that. And but I don't want anybody, I'm not trying to make anybody think that my values are correct or supersede anybody else's. My thing is more, hey man, if your value system is like stay home and save lives, I understand that. I'm not without empathy or sympathy, but that should be your choice, in my opinion. You choose to do that because, like you said, no one's saving you but you, right? And no one's saving me but me. And I accept the consequences that comes with my choices as well. Like I know there's an assumed risk. I very well may get sick and die, but I also very may well get sick and die before COVID-19. I very well may get into a car crash while texting or get hit by a drunk driver. There's a lot of assumed risk in my life. You and I are risk takers by nature and have been doing risky things with our lives probably more than others prior to this.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that that's the correct course of action. That's not for everybody. And I don't think it should be. And I also don't think my value system should override anybody's. And I don't want my value system to put anybody else in danger either. So even though I would like to go about my life, I'm not without knowing that there's a level of social responsibility. I also don't want to get people sick either. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get somebody sick and cause their loved one to die or suffer either. I don't want.
Yeah, of course.
I would like to try to go about my life being free while minimizing impact on people, especially during this time. However, I'm also aware that I don't know that that's possible either. I don't know that what you and I are discussing is possible. I don't know that that's sustainable. I don't know that this idea of like leveling people off and seeing our side is nothing more than a delusional utopian dream.
It's like it's a pragmatist to me wants to avoid taking a hard stance either way, and it's not an attempt to be like lukewarm and just like not have an opinion. It's literally like just not knowing. I really don't know if I'm.
It's the human condition.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been presented with a set of information that I'm like, yeah, this is it. I know what I want to believe. Right. I know what I want to believe, but I'm not sure that that's
truth. And I know what I want to do. That I'm sure of.
Yeah. That I'm very sure of. I'm not sure of what's right. And I would really love to just get some hard stats. Like it's even like I would like to get, is this actually going to kill more people than the flu will?
I don't know.
Right. Because if it's not, you could put dead bodies in front of people's face all day for things that, that already exist and we just ignore. And if you did that, people would freak the fuck out. And I think that's what's happening. You're talking about like stacks of bodies at the morgue. The other problem is I'll talk to people that work at hospitals and some people are like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I'll talk to other people at hospitals and they're like, yeah, man, this shit's way overblown.
Both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. You get people in the medical field that are martyring themselves over this. And then which I have a hard time with. And then you get people in the medical field that are like, yeah, I don't think this is such a big deal. I think it's kind of overblown. And it's like, I don't think either of you are lying to me.
I think it comes down to individual perspective, right? So like what's normal for you and I is it not necessarily normal for everybody else, right? Like I was just saying, even in the risk taking things, and you and I, actually Andre and I were talking about this yesterday. Andre Duchasse, who you know, we were talking about like, man, you, me, and him share common ground in having a less than normal and healthy childhood and upbringing, right? So we're kind of used to a certain level of dysfunction and kind of like a baseline of dysfunction being normal. So like, I'm pretty sure that you and I probably to some degree are less stressed during this than most people, because it's just like, man, I grew up in chaos. So like a chaotic world to me doesn't necessarily move me off my baseline too far. And if you can apply that to like nurses and doctors who maybe are used to people dying in front of them daily before this. So like seeing this doesn't really shake their baseline too much. So they're like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. It's overblown. And then maybe you have another nurse who's maybe new to the job, is 6 months in, and they're seeing people fucking dying left and right, and it's traumatic to them.
Perhaps it's, it's hard to say. I think, I'm just sitting here thinking, and I'm like, okay, how much am I willing to let my life be run into the ground by another entity, right?
Well, that's
like,
what
where's the threshold, and when does the social agreement give out?
Right. Well, here we are now, and that's what I mean. And this is like, it's hard to say, like, man, you see these protesters, it's like, well, maybe for them, that's the line. Here we are at week 5, and I don't know what the circumstances of those protesters are in Michigan, man. And like, depending on where they are in Michigan, if you're in Flint, Michigan, your life's been pretty hard already. And now on top, that might be the breaking point. So you might look.
I'd like to have an intelligent conversation or dialogue with a lot of people, but you can't make a post like that, right? So imagine you go make a post on any social media platform. When does the social agreement run out, right? You cannot have I can have a civil conversation, but it will not be civil, right? With all the people that are interacting on there, like a couple of hundred people, a couple thousand people, people get so shit. You believe that? You're a fucking asshole. Well, okay, without any effort to like understand the other person's perspective at all.
Trump may have done this already yesterday. Did you see Trump's Twitter yesterday?
I don't really watch much of his press stuff.
Me neither, but it started circulating and it was real, dude. And they questioned him about it today in his daily briefing. He took to Twitter yesterday and went hard in the paint, dude. He went like, liberate Michigan, liberate Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, it's without saying what's the social contract shit. He just kind of was like, yup, like, let it rip, man, to protect your Second Amendment, protect your livelihood. I mean, it's almost the same discussion.
Yeah.
The sitting president.
It's interesting. And then where do we go from here? So it's like the people that want this quarantine want more government.
Do they? Or I mean, I don't know. Do they? Or do they not realize that taking that stance almost implies it, right?
Taking that stance, you want to be saviored and taken care of.
Yeah.
Or have other people taken care of, if your concern is other people, right? They're going to take care of me and they're going to take care of us. I definitely, my natural inclination is to have a problem with that.
Yeah, and I think there's a healthy level of skepticism and anti-authoritarian, because otherwise you're just naive.
Yeah, I think it's very unhealthy to just authority and powers, to just sit on face value. I think that's an unhealthy stance, to just trust good government and they're here to serve you. They haven't worked for us in a long time. Yeah, I think that's foolish. At the risk of putting on, I love to put on my tinfoil hat, and there is that part of me that is a bit of an anarchist and just wants, free reign to kind of do what I want to do. I realize not everybody can live like that, and perhaps I shouldn't even live like that all the time. So yeah, man, it just, this thing leaves me with more questions than answers. Like the more that I look at it, I just end up with more questions than answers, you know?
We probably will for quite some time. I don't know that it'll be many years before we dig out of this mess with any kind of clear idea of what really took place. I think it's going to be quite some time until you can really make sense of anything. And I think ultimately it comes down to you as a person, right? Like what we said, nobody else is taking care.
Yeah. Personal responsibility and assumed risk is I think the name of the game here for a lot of us, because look, man, a 3 month lockdown, I can't sustain that.
Nobody can, man.
I can't sustain that. So then what choices do I get left with to provide for myself and my family when I get to that place?
What's that?
What choices am I left with when I get put in a position, right, that I have to provide for my family, and I don't have money to put food on my plate because the government told me I can't. I'm not allowed to because I have to save somebody else's life, right?
Right. And then at what point is that tyrannical, right? Like, you mean that is like the Joseph Stalin playbook to some degree, right? Like the government tells you what your role is and what you're going to do, and you don't necessarily have a choice in it. And that leads to a lot of very bad things. And I'm not saying that's
yeah, of course, but I mean it's worth looking at it. And it's so, am I a bad guy if I go into that by any means mentality when I've been forced into a by any means situation?
I don't know.
Right? Just interesting.
If you're asking me personally, no, I don't think you are. And I think this is exposing that, right? This is two sides of the coin of that any means mentality. One side of the coin is by any means necessary.
Security by any means. Safety and security by any means.
Exactly. I will stay home and follow the rules and protect myself and my grandmother, my loved ones by any means necessary. And I have full trust that this is I am willing to risk full economic collapse and whatever it is to not get sick and not die. And on the other hand, there's people that by any means necessary are looking to preserve their freedom and their right to individual responsibility. And so it's two sides of the coin on that. And I don't know which one's right or wrong, but I know which one I subscribe to for sure.
Yeah. I hope it doesn't come to that where I have to, because if I had to, I would definitely take somebody else's food if I have to. I think
everybody would at some point.
Yeah, I would do what I would hope maybe there would be a way that I wouldn't have to do that. Perhaps like a trade of skills or something along those lines. If it really, degenerates into I think about what will I do if I have to provide for myself when I don't have anything, right? When I don't have a means to provide for myself, how will you provide for yourself? I think that's an interesting question. And how long can you sustain yourself on a $1,200 check and maybe some unemployment if you get it, Not
very long. And listen, at some point, the whole model becomes completely unsustainable. Like I've seen on social media, people talking about like, oh, this could go till June, July. I'm like, I don't care. If I have to shelter in place for the next 3 months, I will. It's like, are you so sure about that? Like, Are you so sure? Like, are you sure that you're going to be able to sustain that? Are you going to keep your job? Am I going to keep my job if this goes for 3 months? I don't know. Are you going to keep your unemployment for 3 months? Is the government going to run out of money? Is the wealth going to be hijacked again? You don't know that that's sustainable, man. Like, so you might be willing to make that for the next 3 months, but like, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know that that's sustainable. Have you extrapolated that thought process out to the worst case scenario that you're willing to agree? Like, oh, I'll stay in place for as long as it takes. Like,
what does that entail, bro? What does that entail, homie? You're going to make a statement like that.
Well, I've seen people make those statements.
Yeah, for sure. People are very sure of what they'll do for months at a time, which is
funny. Hey, listen, I'm not begrudging that either, because I've made knee-jerk reactions myself that I just explained. So that could very well be somebody's knee-jerk reaction that now, given time to sober up from that, they understand the differences. But who knows? I don't know.
Do you think it's being downplayed, the effect this is having mental health wise for most people? Because I think, without trying to sound dramatic, I think this is traumatic to people.
100% it is. I think that you have
and I don't begrudge them for this being traumatic. I think it's traumatic. You're putting them in a position to worry about the life and freedom at the same time, or one or the other, to such a degree that I don't think anybody in our lifetime has ever seen this before.
No. And you're also traumatizing them to the point that maybe they will carry a fear mentality way past the point of this. Say this is over. Say this is over. Yeah. Say this is over next month. How many people are going to be terrified of going to a concert? They're going to be terrified of people being near them.
Public gathering. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
humans are social creatures, like we need contact with one another. I'm a fucking introvert, and I need a certain amount of human contact with people to operate optimally, and to be happy and enjoy life. And so I'm starting to feel it, like the need for interaction with other people, and I do have a history of mental health issues, and I've been hospitalized for mental health stuff before. And thank God I have tools to deal with this stuff as it comes up. Like I deal with a pretty high amount of anxiety that I do have some tools to combat, and and a history of depression and other emotional issues. But most people don't have tools, man.
No.
Most people don't have any tools. So what about those motherfuckers that are sitting home with no tools? That's concerning to me.
Yeah, and it should be. I don't not agree with you. I think that's another thing. It's another thing that needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, and I can take a hard stance on that. Like, your life, whoever, this obscure, this person out there, your life is not more important than my mental health.
No,
right?
No.
Because that stuff's really hard to come back from.
But here's the thing, right? Here's the other question to that. How many lives will be lost to the impact of this?
Oh, a lot. I mean, probably not the numbers. Probably, if we're talking about death, I don't think the numbers that we'll see from the COVID itself, but my point, the point that I'm making, right, is what is to the point that you said. Your mental health is not more than worth somebody else's life. But if your mental health, and maybe not you personally, but there's other people whose mental health may deteriorate to the point where their life is in jeopardy just as much as somebody who's in a hospital with the disease. So who's to, do you value that person's life more because they have the disease, and the other person just has a mental disease that causes them to perish? That's where I favor assumed risk. It's like, okay, since we can't put these on a scale and get a balance one way or the other, or see which one way is more, I lean towards the side of assumed risk. So
me too, because that's like, you can't, this is the problem with these ideas, because they're very socialist and communist in some degree. Maybe those aren't the right terms, but I think you can see where I'm going with it. Where it makes
more government,
right? But it puts the power in other people's hands to decide who's worth more. And at this point in time, COVID is worth more than everything, apparently. And I have a problem with that, because there's people now with other afflictions that are can't get treatment because it's COVID season. Like isn't that just as selfish? Isn't it selfish to say, like, hey man, I don't want my family member to die of this disease? And it's like, okay, I get it. I don't want my family member to die of any disease. I don't want my family.
That's the argument for staying home, is so that the healthcare system isn't overburdened.
Right. I get that. But at the same time, there's going to be consequences of that as well, and there already
Yeah,
are.
it's like they're trying to avoid triage, right? But you're basically you're triaging people anyway because there's going to be undesirable side effects from this long-term quarantine, and I wouldn't be. I mean, California's talking about early May to start sort of reopening a lot of things. Um, I'm doubtful that we'll see that actually. So okay, you're gonna push this to June. Man, that's a long fucking time, dude. Like, what is gonna be left over after June? And not that we won't be able to rebuild from this, but is it worth it?
Well, and not only is it worth it, my problem, like I was saying, is like who granted authority to these people to decide what is more valuable? And that's part of my, like, why is one more valuable than the other? There's fallout already and consequences from, like you said, not overburdening the medical and hospitals, but like, what about the other people that have emergencies, that have pre-existing conditions that because they're now considered elective, that aren't getting the treatment, they need to end up dying next month?
I think, they create this sort of false dichotomy that it's, these COVID deaths need to be prevented at all costs, or at least this curve needs to be flattened. And then the other side is, and if you're not down with that, you're on the other side.
You're just selfish.
The other side just doesn't care about life. And I think it's a little bit more complex than that. A lot more complex than that. I don't think it's a black and white issue, and I don't think it should be. I think it's a problem to treat an issue that is so multifaceted, like a black and white issue. Like, you're not going to come to a reasonable solution like that. But is that how government can barely function as it is? So it's not surprising that it's one way or the other. Like, we can do this or this. I don't know. It's like, do these people think that this is really the best thing, or are they pandering to fear, or what the end game behind is?
My question on that isn't to government, because like we said, government has to do something, obviously. So my question isn't really more to that. It's more to the side of people pointing fingers and calling people selfish. It's like, you have, like you said, you can't look at this as strictly a black and white issue.
I think it's lazy too. I think it's really lazy to look at it as a black and white issue. I don't know. It's weird. Like, I was pretty convinced I was wrong the other day, like looking at the science that I was trying to review that would come across. And then, more and more science coming out that people are showing up with antibodies, and so the death rates must be much, much, much lower than anticipated. And a lot of studies to that effect. So, that's got me leaning back towards my original position, where, okay, perhaps it's time to, as you said, quarantine the sick, which is what a quarantine is supposed to be, quarantine the sick and at risk, and do our best to let the rest of us, assume risk, go back to our life. Those with antibodies, I don't think it's outlandish to think that herd immunity would come from, people just getting back to their life, and, those that won't be affected, even if they get it, let them get it. Then it's over and done with. It's ran its course through that person, and just let it get through the community.
I mean, to some degree, yeah. And the pragmatist in me, and I know this sounds insensitive, but I mean, this is a fact of life. So if you were looking at war, right? You're looking at a war, and say it's a righteous war. It's a war to protect America. And right after the Twin Towers came down, everybody there was no divide. It was go get these motherfuckers, right? And there is an assumed calculated risk behind that. You understand there's going to be loss of life in that.
Right.
And in this case, the unfortunate reality is that there is going to be loss of life. You're not going to mitigate that risk. There is, no matter what. But the other thing is too, there's loss of life no matter what. There's loss of life without COVID. There's a loss of life.
It's funny that when you put it like that, I think one of the worst things that we can do in life, right, and when we have to make a decision, is make no decision, right? So it's like do nothing. So we assume no risk, but then we don't get any stronger from that, right? So
Right.
I want to say that I think the time spent so far was probably necessary. I'll say that the social distancing and the quarantining, I'll say it was probably necessary to the degree that we used it so far. I think pushing it to how much longer is it necessary, I'm not so sure about. And I
agree.
I'd be generous to say another 2 weeks if I had my opinion. I'm a fucking moron. So, I don't really, I'm not a science guy. I haven't been clear on the math yet. All the math that I'm looking at, it's not alarming to me.
No.
Maybe perhaps I'm cold, perhaps I'm, I lack compassion, but the math hasn't made me go, oh my God, like this is fucking horrible. It seems like a sickness that, I seems to be that if you put enough dead bodies in people's faces, you'll scare the fuck out of them. So yeah, it's fucking weird times, man. It's weird times. What have you been doing to keep yourself sort of as sane as you can during this time?
Yeah. So here's one thing that we haven't gotten into that I think is a little out of the box, but a curious thing, right? I wonder, and I've wondered, and this is, obviously this is somewhat biased because I'm going to espouse the benefits of a lifestyle that I live, right? But hey, this is what I do. I wonder how many guys that do jiu-jitsu have been afflicted by this, because I think the close contact that we're in constantly builds a level of immunity to things. Like when you're constantly exchanging fluids, you're in close contact with people by nature.
I don't know if it strengthens your immune system. I mean, Roger Gracie got it pretty bad, and he does. But I don't know how hard he trains anymore or any of that. But I didn't know. Yeah, he got it pretty bad. But to be fair, I don't know a ton of people in the jiu-jitsu community that have had this to a serious degree.
Me neither, and that's why I was curious about it.
Other than Roger Gracie, I can't think of anybody.
Yeah, I know. I think Jacques Ray said he had it briefly, but I think he said it wasn't too crazy. Obviously, people are going to get it no matter. Jiu-jitsu is not the separating factor, but I wonder how much it plays into it. You know what I mean? Because I don't know many people that had it.
If you do jiu-jitsu, you probably take care of yourself to some degree. I mean, I know a lot of guys that don't, but you might eat healthy. You might be more inclined to take vitamins and increase your immune system and take care of yourself when you participate in more active sports and activities and lifestyles. So I wouldn't rule that out, that living a healthier lifestyle. I do my best to take care of myself, and I keep a pretty rigorous training schedule, and I take care of my nutrition, and my vitamin intake is always something that I'm paying attention to. So, and ways to mitigate stress, and I do a lot of breathing exercises and breath work to work with my central nervous system is important, because that's one thing, is like the stress response is something that I have to pay attention to. So and I think that's important. I think if you're stressed and fried, if your nervous system is fried, your immune system is going to be compromised. And so if you're paying attention to that stuff, I can't see how being stressed and being on being on edge is not going to affect if your immune system's compromised, that could definitely affect how hard this thing actually hits you.
I don't disagree, but my thought about jiu-jitsu was strictly about the close contact. I was curious about how much that.
I don't know. I I think it's
I don't know either.
it's got merit to think about. You'd need somebody that's got a background in science to.
Yeah, it's more just a food for thought thing. I don't think it's
Sure.
something that's worth diving into too much. It's just kind of a food for thought, bro, science thing that popped in my mind.
Are you single right now?
What?
Are you single right now?
I am, yeah. Me and
How's Tinder and Bumble during all this?
I haven't been paying I'm not really geared to that game to begin with. You know what I mean? I'm
All
not.
right. It's probably off the hook right now. Probably a lot of like sneaky illegal quarantine sex going on.
I'm sure there is. I mean, I'm on them. I swipe and shit, and you see way more people on it now, obviously. But I'm not. My personality's not really generally geared to that. I'm not the best. I'm not like a good icebreaker in general. Like obviously, I'm capable of a conversation, but I'm not. I generally don't start conversations or initiate conversations very much, especially with strangers. So I'm not the best for that world. I don't really do that in real life. It's very rare that, or not rare, almost never that you'll see me in a bar, go chat some girl up. It's just not who I am. If I get into a conversation, I'm good at that, but I'm a terrible opener. So add in the mobile internet portion of that, it's like, I'm not built for that shit. But I'm on it. I see it. And you can definitely see there's an uptick in.
If I was single, I'd be fucking killing it right now.
I mean, well, here's the thing. It's like 50-50. Like I've talked to a good amount of people, but it's like 50-50. Are people really willing to come out? I mean, I would be, but I don't know.
Man.
What?
I'll bet they are. Look, if you're on Tinder in the first place, like there's a tremendous assumed risk. You're just meeting a fucking stranger based on their pictures.
Yeah, but not right now. I mean, right now. Like right now, I think most people are on it out of boredom because it gives them somebody to talk to and kind of gives them like a, hey, if we can talk well and this thing ends, then maybe we can meet. But outside of that, man, I don't know how many people.
I think you're giving people too much credit.
Well, I mean, are we though? Because look at what you're seeing from people on social media who are willing to stay home.
I mean, it's a great way to virtue signal until that need needs to get met. That need tends to trump quite a few other needs.
Sure, you're not wrong. But I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm sure there's people doing it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's people who are not doing it. I know I would. I wouldn't think twice. But I know that I'm not. I'm also not most people. Neither are you.
I would. Yeah.
No. I mean, you're not most people, is what I'm saying. You absolutely do it.
Oh, who knows, man? I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you got a dick, you're willing to do some dumb shit.
Yeah, without a virus, I'm willing to do a lot of dumb shit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I haven't tested the water enough to give you a good answer. I'm sure some other people.
We're gonna do a report back on that, son.
Yeah, I will. I know a couple people I can poll to get the real answer. I'm 100%. I can tell you the 100% certainty. I know there's people that are meeting up and fucking each other, but they're not strangers, right? So that's the problem I don't have to add to that. I don't know that there's anybody pulling strangers off of Tinder right now because I think that's a pretty risky move and I think women in general are probably less risk takers. So I don't know that if I was a female and I started talking to me on the other end of the phone, I don't know that I'd be willing to take the risk to come meet me.
Just like, yo, what up, girl? You want to build your herd immunity with me? You know?
What's up, girl? You want to see my antibody papers?
Yeah. What's up, bitch? You got them antibodies or what? You know?
Yeah. Or I take a fresh picture with my haircut. That's the ultimate flex right now, man. Like, yo, check me out. I got a haircut right now. Essential.
Haircut?
What?
Your hair stay getting cut, or are you looking shaggy right now?
I'm a little shaggy at the moment, but if I'm telling the truth, I'm getting a cut tomorrow. So.
Right on. I just got my wife just takes the clip, does a one all over. I'm straight.
I thought about shaving my head, but I just recently in the last year and a half grew my hair back. And yeah, I'm not willing to do that work again just in case this shit does lift soon.
Hair, I'll grow it. So.
Yeah, well, I'm 36 and I still got it, so I got to rock it while I got it, right?
Keep
And I gotta rub it in you bald motherfuckers' faces a little bit too.
Yeah, I don't blame you. You gotta have something going for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So where do you see? Where do you think this takes jiu-jitsu going forward? Like, do you think it's gonna be like? I know there's definitely like secret sessions going on all over the place. Speakeasy jiu-jitsu's going on.
I'd be lying if I said I haven't participated in some of them.
Yeah, it is what it is. When do you think? So I don't think that. I think jiu-jitsu will be like one of the last. So they say gyms can start to open back up as part of Trump.
That's regular gyms.
That's regular gyms. Yeah. So, but it's like, dude, if you're fucking getting near people, you're getting near people.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's I don't know. So without getting into the semantics of that, about how like you know, you're getting near people, it is what it is. Where do I think jiu-jitsu goes? In a generalization, I think most people that do jiu-jitsu will be willing to take that risk. I think there might be some who don't.
Dude, believe it or not, man, there's a lot of guys that won't. There's a lot of guys whose wives won't let them train, or they got family that they're worried about. I think jiu-jitsu will survive this. I think a lot of people that stopped training for a long time, I bet a lot of them don't go back.
It's definitely a possibility. You're right. You know, and I'm you and I, well, less you now, but you and I are mostly uniquely privileged in the fact that we're over 35 and don't have children and weren't up until recently married. So I don't have to deal with worrying about like, I don't have to make certain bargains with my freedom because I have to do things for my children and my family. So I'm worried about myself. So I'm uniquely selfish in that, and I'm aware of that. So I don't know. There might be a lot of guys that are married where their wives are going to not have it because of whatever reasons. And they might not come back.
Can you imagine that? Like letting your wife tell you what you can and can't do?
No.
That's fucking. I'm married, and that would never fucking happen. My wife knows that would never. First of all, my wife's cool, and she trains, so like it's not even on the table. But yeah, I could never put that's not an equal relationship. Like that, man. There's some codependency going on there. If you're gonna let your wife take your passion away from you.
So I'm gonna tell you a quick story, and it's extremely relevant. Without.
Name names, motherfucker. Name names.
I'm not gonna name names. I don't want to do it, but it's me personally. So a girl I was with, we at the start of this, like right around this was starting, she had actually broken up with me. A couple of weeks went by, and also I'm not trying to put this out there to be mean or anything like that, because she may actually hear this. So I just want you to know, like, this is no disrespect. We're actually on better terms right now. But she had broken up with me. We kind of spoke after a couple of weeks and decided we were going to kind of maybe try and speak again. And so we decided that. And I said to her, hey, listen, like, you know, I don't know that I want to get on this roller coaster again, because I'd been with somebody, and you know very well that I was with somebody who was very on and off for quite some time. So I was weary about it. But this girl, to her credit, is probably the sweetest person I know, and I don't think she has a bad intention in her body. I really don't, and neither does even Eric Ott believes this, and Eric Ott's a cold-blooded piece of shit in a lot of ways. So he was like, yo, that girl is like, she's good, you know, and I agree, she is. So, but I had my reservations about it, and a week into it, she kind of put an ultimatum out on me, because she had seen in the time we had broken up, I was on a dating app, and she asked me about it, and I was honest. I said, yes, I am, and at this point in time, I'm not willing to. I'm not altering that course for you right now. Like I told you, we can speak, and there's no promises, you know. And I asked you if you're comfortable with that, and she agreed. But so anyway, long story short, she more or less, and it was kind of in the middle of this quarantine, more or less was like, look, you know, like I'm not either you do this or like, I'm not comfortable with this. And I was like, I get it. I'm not trying to change your mind. So like, I'm not changing my stance on this. And it's like, that was in the middle of a quarantine, man. Like, I stuck to my guns.
That's respectable.
Yeah. Like I could have caved because it's like, hey man, let me just lie and make this girl happy so I can keep maybe getting,
lying. I mean, we've all done it, lied to get laid, but, yeah, I mean, when you're in your 30s, you shouldn't be doing that anymore.
Right.
Right.
And so the only reason why I'm sharing this is because it's relevant to what you're saying. Imagine, and I don't think she was trying to do this necessarily, but imagine me letting anybody tell me what I'm going to do. Like I'm not going to be told what to do. I'm not going to acquiesce to your wishes just to make you comfortable. I wasn't comfortable with that choice, and I'm not going to lay it down to make you comfortable, or even to make myself more comfortable during any uncomfortable time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's commendable. How do you feel that you're going to die alone?
I kind of made that wager already. I think I'm comfortable.
That's what it looks like it's heading. That's cool though.
We all die alone, man.
Yeah, we do. I'm going to die before my wife, most likely, so that's good. At least I won't have to be sad.
Yeah.
She's like, no. She wants to die first, but she's 25.
Listen, I'm probably going to die before whoever, if I'm with somebody for a while too, I'll probably die before them as well. I don't know, man. Listen, it's not that, I'm not anti as I've gotten older. If we were having this conversation 10 years ago, I would hold hard and fast, like, fuck that. I don't have that thought process anymore. I'm not anti a relationship. Quite the opposite, actually.
No, you're just incapable.
I don't even think I am anymore. I don't think that I'm incapable.
No.
I'm getting better.
So yeah, each time, 35, 36, you should start getting, a little bit of fucking skill in that department. How's that, man? That's crazy. Eric got married, and he's dead inside, right? I'm fucking married, and I was committed to being on the field for the rest of my life. And then there you are, still hanging strong. So
well, I mean, look, you got to look at it from another perspective as well. How many people do you know that got married 10 years ago that are now divorced?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like, who knows, man? I don't know. I'm not against that idea. I think I've
Oh, dude, listen. There is a strong argument for staying single through your life, and just, I used to say, why give one woman like a lifetime of memories when you could give like 1,000 women the memory of a lifetime? Like I felt like that was, being a nicer guy, and then obviously my fucking wife hijacked me and ruined all my plans. But
there's nothing wrong with that though either.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. It's good. It's all got its trade-off. I think when I romance being single, it's to avoid the responsibilities of being married, right? So like when you're married or in a serious relationship, you have responsibilities towards people. But then I also remember, like, being single is largely, especially if you're like single and like trying to fuck all the time, is largely a long string of disappointing evenings with the occasional success of a hunt, of a successful hunt, right? So it's largely a lot of disappointment.
Well, I mean, it depends on if that's what your focus is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm talking in terms of merely you're playing the field and just having a good time.
In all honesty, I've really, like I said, I've never really been, it's weird. And I don't know if it's because I don't want to be like my father, because my father's been a pussy hound his whole life, like an incredibly prolific one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been like that. I've never put my energy into that in a lot of ways. Like, and all my friends kind of make fun of me about it to some degree. Like, if it doesn't fall in my lap, it's not happening. And it's like, it's more or less true. I don't know what that is. I think part of it is a personality trait that I'm just not like a big icebreaker. And I don't know if that's like because of.
Yeah, but I'm not either. And it was a fucking tremendously important to me when I was single.
Huh?
I'm not a great icebreaker either, but I definitely still did what I had to do to fucking go out and get the job done.
Yeah, well, like that's what I mean. I think, and I'm not saying that I don't to some degree, right? Like, if I know that there's something on the line, like I'll put some effort into it. But I think, that I haven't been. I think the reason why I'm more comfortable with it is because, like, the one thing that always drove me crazy, especially one of my last relationships, I got like accused relentlessly of like being a cheater and this and that. It's like, man, I don't. I don't have the energy for that, man. I've never wanted to do that. I like to keep my life.
That's a lot of energy.
Yeah, I don't like the drama that comes with that. I don't have the energy to keep two. I'm lucky I can keep one person fucking happy. You think I can fucking balance keep?
And if somebody's accusing you of that and you're not doing it, that person's got problems. That's a red flag to me.
Yeah, that's another conversation. But I just mean for me, I know me. I don't have the. Even still, when I'm single, like I generally, if I find one person I like, I kind of put most of my energy to that and leave the other things alone because, like, I don't have the energy or the interest usually to balance those things. So I think that's why I'm generally not as disappointed on those nights. Not that you're not wrong and shit, but I think for me, why it's always been a little bit more maintainable is for those reasons. Because like I generally like the freedom to do what I'm doing. I enjoy the lack of responsibility to other people and part of that's because of how I grew up, man. I didn't grow up responsible.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
That's the best part is not being responsible to anybody.
Yeah. I'm not responsible for your emotions or your happiness. And I enjoy that part because I only have to worry about myself. And I'm aware that that's selfish, but like,
to be fair, in a healthy relationship, it's the same.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And perhaps your upbringing didn't lend itself to paint relationships to look like that, but
No.
yeah, healthy relationships, the better things are going in my marriage, the less our happiness depends on each other.
Right.
And if and the scales can get tipped either way for both of us at certain times, but if there's a dependence from one to the other, something's off, something's off. So yeah, the less that we depend on each other to make each other happy, the happier we are. Like if you ain't all right with you, I ain't got time for you. You know what I mean? Like I don't have the energy to make you all right with you.
I think that's a unique thing to find in somebody else. I think it's a hard thing to find.
It's work though. It's not that you'll instantly find that. I think it's just a recognition of what being emotionally healthy looks like. Anything else by nature is codependence. By definition, I mean, is codependence. The dependent. If my well-being is dependent upon you, let's say even from a friendship standpoint, right? Like you could be a codependent friend, right? I need you to make me feel a certain way to be okay. That's codependency. If I can't fulfill those, emotional needs on my own, now you can certainly add to my life, right?
But if your absence steals from my life, it's a problem.
Yes. Yeah. For sure. It's a problem. Absolutely. And that's not to say, and I had to find a balance with that too, because I would do that often. Like if my wife was having trouble with something, sometimes I would feel like it was taking from me, but it was me feeling like I needed to fix something. And there's a difference, right? If I don't have to, oftentimes she doesn't want me to fix nothing. She just wants me to listen to her. And that's how women are. They just want they just want to be heard, not necessarily fixed. If they want you to fix something, that's fucked up. It's not our job to fix shit. So it's, it's interesting, but it's all a learning process, man. And I think the key is to figure, like I've had to find somebody I liked being around enough that I was willing to go through these extremely uncomfortable learning processes with, right? Because it ain't going to be perfect. It's like, okay, is this person, am I willing to be uncomfortable with this person and grow into these ideals? Because it's not always like that. I don't walk around and everything's perfect all the time. Like, but I'll say this: we've gotten along. We're together now like an absurd amount of time because of the quarantine, but we don't really fight much at all. In fact, we probably been getting along better during the quarantine than before it. I'm not sure if there's a reason why, but I think we just both understand that there's difficult times that lie ahead for us. And, how many chicks are going to be down to like go through a situation like okay, we're going to go visit New York. And then, okay, I guess we're moving to San Diego. And she's like, all right, we're moving to San Diego. Like, we just came out here for a trip and decided we're staying here. And now we might end up going back to New York for a couple weeks because we don't know where we're going to live because, we had to make a decision for the welfare of somebody that we know. And we're just kind of letting the chips fall where they may and just enjoy the adventure together.
Night sweats.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be hard pressed to find a lot of that, man. Like I have a hard time finding somebody who's like willing to put value into how I see and value my own time. And that was like one of the sticking points of my previous relationship was like time. And one thing I learned from that, and it carried into my most recent one. Something that I learned is that no one's entitled to anybody's time. My significant other's not entitled to my time, and I'm not entitled to theirs either. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the time you choose to carve out for me because you don't have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Even when you're married, it's the same. And I think people don't understand that. You're not entitled to shit. I will, and it sounds cold and fucked up, but it's. I think there's an agreement, and I guess it has to be within reason. And the other person can always decide, like, that's not okay with me. You know what I mean? Like, what you're willing to give, I'm not all right with that, and that's fine too. But I will give you what I can give you when I can give it to you. And if I try to force myself to do any more than that, I'm going to resent you.
And also the value is not the same. And this is like something
100%. Yeah.
Somebody who has
quantity is not quality. Yeah.
Right. Somebody like myself who has a lot going on. It takes effort that I'm not begrudgingly doing to carve out time for you. So it like increases its value, right? So somebody who's like a 9-to-5er than a couch dweller, yeah, you have all the time in the world. They don't have anything else. Your hobby becomes your significant other.
Yeah.
And that's not you.
So dangerous, man. That's really. I think that's dysfunctional.
I think that's something I dealt with in one of my past relationships, and it kind of took the time and distance from it to really kind of start to be.
Yeah. The other person, I mean, if you're somebody that's got shit going on and somebody else don't got shit going on, that's a problem. If you got shit going on and you give it up and you cease to have things going on because they don't, that also is going to, run you into problems. I believe somewhere down the line. It's that's fucking bizarre to me. It's like that a person feels like they're entitled to this much time out of somebody.
Yeah. And like, there is an entitlement, like you said, within reason, based on certain factors. Like if you're going to be together, there's a certain reasonable expectation of time spent together. Yes.
Well, no, I think everybody gets to set their own boundary, right? So what's acceptable to me is acceptable to me. And if it becomes unacceptable, okay, I don't have to continue to see you anymore. Or I'm, in some regards, I might be willing to, value the time that I do get from you. And maybe I want to see you more, but okay, I understand why I can't. And I'll just value the time. I think that's like the healthy approach. And I mean, some people are just unavailable completely, and that's a whole different story.
I mean, I used to be at one point in time. I was completely unavailable for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's all been actually very beneficial to me because it kind of put me in face with a lot of things that maybe I thought I had a handle on, and things that I wasn't even aware of. If I didn't go through some of those things, I don't think I've been aware of. At the risk of sounding corny and like catchphrases, but like I wouldn't have been aware of like traumas that I still carried with me that were affecting me. I wasn't aware of
that's important, man. I just I had a session with a guy, we'll call him like took some spiritual counsel recently, and man, within 20 minutes, this guy had me literally like in tears, like about some like trauma stuff that I thought I had gone over already, because I had combed over it like a million times, and he was able to put it in a context that I just hadn't looked at it from yet. And yeah, it's important to get in touch with that stuff to move forward. I think if I don't look at that stuff, I can process all these things out in my head all I want, and it's sometimes it's helpful to get somebody else to kind of guide you through that stuff, and otherwise I'm going to keep bringing the same dysfunction into all these relationships if I don't brave those waters a little bit, go back, look at that stuff, and try to make some sense of it moving forward and make peace with it. I keep bringing this damage into relationships over and over again, and repeating these insane patterns, and it's if something's not working, if something's not working, it's time to discard it for something that does, right?
Right. And like sorry, I'm making a quick drink.
You getting drunk?
I might, yeah. What else am I gonna do?
Yeah. Get drunk and slap your roommates around.
They can hear you. Yeah, honestly, it might be fun because what else there to do?
Yeah.
No, actually, something I should mention. Actually, I'm extremely grateful that I get along with the people that I get. Like me and Chris live together, and we've been great friends for quite some time. And thank God we get along, man. We've lived together for several years. We don't argue. We don't fight. And through this, nothing's changed. So I'm very thankful for that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are living with some people that they're not getting along with, and it's making this shit a lot worse. So thankfully.
Yeah, God forbid, man. That's fucking shit.
Shut up, Allie. Nobody asked you. That's Yarborough's girlfriend. She's cool as fuck though too. But yeah, I'm wildly grateful for that. Yeah, in regards to what you were saying, man, like I think if I didn't have those things go on in my previous relationship, I might not have arrived at some of the conclusions I've arrived at personally for myself, and like I don't think I would have ever realized there were still some things at play in me that I kind of I sort of maybe convinced myself that I had dealt with. Like for probably the better part of my 20s, I immersed myself into JiuJitsu, right, and fighting. And you were there for a large part of it, man. Like, we've known each other for several years, and I think you and I have both seen each other be many different people over the past 13 years. And you and I both share, like we both have addiction that runs deep in our family. Like I'm genetically a 2-time loser. My father was a drug addict. My mother's an alcoholic most of my life. So I have a very addictive personality, and I manage the things that I do, even like the drink I'm having now. I'm very careful about what I do with that. I do have an extremely addictive personality, and I kind of swapped addictions, right? Like I became addicted to jiu-jitsu and training. And it took on an identity in my life that I was unaware of. And it took on an almost unhealthy factor in my life. Now, granted, it's a healthier alternative from the other things that it could have gone into.
It could definitely be unhealthy. It could be because once it becomes a crutch, and you have a dependence on it, I don't think it's no longer healthy.
Which it did, but unbeknownst to me. Like I wasn't even aware of it.
Same. I mean, usually that's the case, right? It's unbeknownst.
Right. And I would make that bargain any day though. I would take that addiction for the alternative.
Be dependent upon jiu-jitsu than booze or
right.
Whatever else, substance have you.
Yeah. I'll take that bargain any day. But regardless, for like I said, the better part of my 20s, ignorantly, it became it became a replacement. It became an addiction and a distraction and a crutch to some degree. And when I kind of sort of became aware of it, I came aware of it before the relationship started to some degree, but not to the level that I should have. Like, I started to question why I was doing it. Like, man, like, do I do jiu-jitsu because I genuinely enjoy it? Do I fight because I genuinely enjoy it and I really want to? Or am I doing it for like the social points, you know, like because it's a currency you can kind of trade on, and people will treat you differently when they know that you can fight and assign certain values to you, right? And like, is that why I do it? Or do I do it because I really like it? And those were some hard questions I had to ask myself. And I took a step away from training at one point, and I figured out I love the shit out of it. I do. I love it. There are parts of my identity wrapped up in it, for sure. But more than anything else, I generally love it and I enjoy it. I also need it to some degree. I think I'm the type of person that when I accumulate stress, part of my ability to like process it mentally, I have to kind of blow a lot of it out physically before I can parse through it mentally, if that makes any sense. And that's also something I'm working on. I'm trying to get better at not needing that, but currently the physical aspect helps my mental aspect. But anyway, I sort of, with jiu-jitsu being my focus, I didn't have many relationships. So I didn't have a lot of things like reflecting things back at me. So I kind of convinced myself that like, oh man, I'm over it. Like the shit that happened to me, like doesn't affect me. I'm not worried, until then all of a sudden I'm in a relationship and I have a girlfriend like going like, oh, how was your day? And I'm like, why do you care? You know? Or she's like,
that's pretty fucked up.
Well, I mean, I never realized it until we had arguments, and I'm like, man, I never came home and had anybody ask me how my day was. You know, that never happened in my life, dude. I never had that. I never had anybody call me and be like, where are you? We're concerned about you, and like inquire about my life out of love. Anytime there were inquiries into my life, it was because I was in trouble or like.
Me neither, but I like learned these things. I'm like Dexter. I learned how you're supposed to react, and then I just copy that. You know, so even like
I didn't do that. I was completely like, huh? Like it took a couple of those fights before the light bulb went off in me, dude. I was just like, you know, holy shit. Like, yeah, maybe I didn't realize how conditioned I was to being on my own. And even still to this day, man, like if I meet girls and they'll ask me like, you know, my most recent ex who we're on good terms now, we're speaking and maybe trying to make the best things, but like when we first started dating, you know, she's like, oh, what do you do for the holidays? I'm like, nothing. You know, like, and that's normal to me. I'm used to that.
I don't place any value on like, or very little value on like family the way some people do. Is like for the holidays they have to be with their family. That's so weird to me.
Yeah.
So it's actually changing for me though. I'll tell you this, like, because I'm the same way. Like the holidays, what do I do on the holidays? I don't do anything, you know? Like
I always prefer it that way.
I avoid being around my family at all costs. But I'll tell you what, the thought of going back to New York came to me because like I never had a relationship with my father, and I avoided my mother. You know, once she started developing she became a pill junkie and an alcoholic when she was like in her 50s, and you know, she's sober now a few years. But I avoided the fuck out of my family because they were so dysfunctional. And not that, I mean, they're still pretty dysfunctional in some ways, but I avoided them because it made me uncomfortable, you know? And to a point now where it wasn't hurting, they weren't hurting me or in a position to hurt me anymore. It's not like when I was a kid and there was trauma happening that I couldn't handle. It's like now I'm able to process these things, and I was just being selfish. I didn't want to deal with being a part of a group and you know, having to work through difficulties. Like I see a value in being able to meet people where they're at now. right? And so
I don't disagree with you on that.
so like going home for the summer, I'm like, fuck, man, I could actually spend time with my father. Like I've never had a relationship with my father. And as he's getting older, I think he's starting to really like have a lot of regrets about, our childhoods, my brother and I, the childhoods that we endured, and, the craziness of our household. And my dad's a good guy, and he's, he's fucking nuts, but, it would be, I think, how many opportunities do people get where they had no relationship with their father, and then they could actually gain one later in life, and even the relationship.
I'm lucky in that aspect. I'm lucky.
Like I call my mom now and just talk to her, which is fucking like normally she would call me like a few times a week, and I'd just like text her like, I'll call you later, and just be annoyed. Now I actually like enjoy talking to my mother, and like the idea of spending time with my family, particularly my parents. It's not such a horrifying thing for me anymore. It's not like, oh, I just got to deal with how crazy they are. It's like, okay, I recognize that they're a little crazy, and I can meet them where they're at, because it's not going to be harmful to me at this point.
See, like, my situation is a little different. Like, I never had like an intact family structure, like to avoid. Like I never avoided my family because I recognized they were crazy, or like it just didn't exist. Like I didn't come from an existing family structure. I was literally like, I've been on my own for the most part.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a good way of putting it. Like, I've been virtually on my own since I was 6 years old, man. Like me and my sister were left mostly to fend for ourselves. My mother, to her credit, provided for us in terms of like, we didn't live out on the street, but like, my dad wasn't really around. He would pop in for spurts here or there, and then get back to whatever the fuck he was doing, chasing ass and swindling people out of money. But my mom worked, and my mom was a single mother of 4 at one point, and then 2, me and my sister, as my brother and sister from her previous marriage, moved out and went on with their lives. But she was a waitress, and she worked nights, and like, so me and my sister would wake up and go to school, and we'd come home and she'd either be already at work or leaving to go to work. And it was like, hey, there's $20 on the counter, order food. And we were left to our own devices, and that's the way I grew up for most of my life. I was left to mostly my own devices. And it's not like I had, my mother didn't really have an intact family structure, and neither did my father. So it's like, I didn't have
nobody knew shit.
Yeah, like I did. So like when the holidays came around, I didn't really have like we were going here or going there. I had one aunt that we like, but it was, even that was tepid. It was up and down based on like her and my mother's relationship. So like sometimes we'd go there and sometimes we wouldn't. And like sometimes my older sister and older brother would be around, and we do a holiday with them. But more often than not, it was just, we're just on our own. And that I've been that way mostly since I'm 6 years old. So I'm mostly used to being on my own. Like I said, I didn't come home and have a family dinner. I didn't have come home and have somebody ask me how my day was. I didn't come home and have inquiry into my life. The only time there was inquiries into my life is when I was fucking up in school, and it was like a fucking full-blown intervention. So like when I had my girlfriend be like, where are you? What are you doing? I'm like, why the fuck do you want to know? You know what I mean? Like, and I didn't realize it until that started to happen, and luckily I, for whatever reason, I guess I have the ability to now start to see that. And like you said, I have the ability now, like with my father. Recently, me and my father have always had a very tepid relationship. It's been very up and down. We've had some measure of a relationship, but it's not, I wouldn't say it was good or bad. Like for a while it was bad, and then it was what it was. And outside of like him talking to me about fights, we didn't really have much to speak about ever. And recently this year in January, one of my brothers passed away. It was a brother of mine who is from my father, not my mother. So it was technically a half brother who I really didn't know very well to begin with. I think I met him once when I was younger, and we reconnected about 2 years ago. And that was probably the first time I'd seen him in about 18 years. And the reason why we did was because there was things going on in my family that led me to be like, man, I want to speak to my brother, because he was kind of ostracized from my father and family. And some of his other siblings maintained a relationship with my father. And I'm like, my father's like a different person to everybody. Like, I kind of want to pick my brother who like willfully chose to separate himself and see like what his perspective is. And the reason being is, at this point in time, I wasn't speaking to my father over things that were going on with my sister and my nephew. And most people know my nephew's very important to me. And I was being prevented from speaking to my nephew. So my father posted something on Facebook about his first son, who I met one time in my life. And I only knew him as Scotty. So my father went looking for him to try and find him. They had not spoken for about 15 years. And my father wanted to get back in touch with him and found out he'd been murdered 10 years prior.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he posted the article that he found. And I saw the article on the Facebook, and I went to it and I read it. And they put his birth name, his full birth name in the article, and his name was David.
Wow.
And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm not the first David? Like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, so I'm like, I thought this guy's name was Scotty the whole time. His name was
They're
David.
like, oh, let's try again. We'll try David again.
So like, imagine, I think I was like 33 at this point. Imagine being 33 years old and being like, what the fuck?
My dad's got a kid with the same name.
Yeah, like I thought his name was Scotty the whole time. It was David Scott. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So I'm like, you know what, man? Let me try and track down my brother. And I did. And we spoke and we developed some type of relationship, and he gave me his perspective. And then September of last year, he got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he unfortunately passed away this January. But a course of events kind of went on where me and my father kind of began to speak again slowly and repairing our relationship to some degree. And then by virtue of the relationship I have with my brother, when he got diagnosed, he decided to reach out to my father for the first time in a very long time. And I guess they were able to kind of bury the hatchet. And my father was very involved prior to his death. And man, I could see my father, like I was there to witness the regret on my father and really see, you know, this nearly, he's 79 years old, almost 80-year-old man, see and pay the price of a lifetime of not being around his children. This is the second son of his now that has passed away. And, you know, my father only really got to have any type of real meaningful relationship with one of his sons for a couple months. And like, I could really see, you know, and then obviously like his ex-wife comes because that's the mother, my other brother and their kids. And like, man, a lot of fucked up shit was going on at that point. Also, my father, you were there for one of the podcasts, I think, when I told you about how my father got another child discovered him. So that daughter is the same age as my brother Brian, who just passed. So what does that tell you, right? Like he was cheating on.
Yeah.
And that brought up old wounds for her as well, you know, and like they got into some battles while my brother was sick over this, you know, and it's like, I got to see my father kind of wear that regret and pain. And it's like, you know, I learned a lot about who he is and why he is who he is. And I kind of through that, I think it was cathartic for both him and I. And like, I kind of accepted my father for who he is and I accept him for, he knows, you know, he's not hiding from what he did. He knows, he accepts all the responsibility for the damage he's done in multiple lives, myself and other people, not even his own kids, you know, other people, his lives he's damaged. And there's a lot, man.
Yeah, all the women that you date.
Yeah. He's damaged a lot of fucking people's lives. Oh, and the women I date too, yeah. Yeah, there's other casualties. He's got like generations deep of casualties. Damn, that's a good one. But through that, you know, I kind of, I guess it kind of allowed me to let go of a lot of like ill will I had towards him and just kind of like accept him for the flaws and accept him for the mistakes he made. And like, man, now looking at it and recognizing my own bullshit, it's like, man, I don't know that I would have done any better in your shoes. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't know, you know, like how can I don't know. it seems
I
like,
I look at my dad's life the same way. Like, he was there the whole time. My parents had been married. Should they have been married? Probably not. I don't know. Um, but he was there in a sense to provide, as far as like parenting and emotional support, like zero. Um, but yeah, and he's starting to regret, and have regrets and start to have his, emotional breakdowns about the stuff that he's been experiencing. But I I see where he's coming from. Like, man, he gave up his entire 20s to work 7 days a week, like have no life of his own, to
Yeah.
raise a bunch of kids, and a family, and to the best of his ability at the time. Like, fuck, I would have resented the shit out of everything too, probably, had I had to give up my whole, my had a kid when I was a teenager, and then basically give up any subsequent youth I might have had, to raise these kids and take care of them, or at least do what I thought to provide for them. Is that's a burden, man. You're giving up your life. Like, you don't have a choice, to feel like you don't have a choice. We all have choices, but to feel like you don't have the choice, that you have
It's a hard bargain. It's a hard bargain, right? Like,
I get it. Yeah. So I get it. And I, I get where he's at with that. And I, I've kind of let that go. So,
especially like, I don't know the details of your parents, but like, I know my father and mother, they don't come from a good family either. Like, I can't blame my mom. Like, same thing as my mother. My mother's been a single mother since she's 16 years old.
Yeah. Broken makes broken. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I come from, like, dysfunction is practically family tradition.
yeah.
Like, how can I don't know that I probably would have done the same in both their shoes.
I always say, like, other than my dad, because he did all right for himself. Like, I mean, whatever. He towards the end of his life, he started making six figures and stuff like that. So I guess from that. But other than that, like, I come from a dynasty of losers. Like, there's a lot of losers in my family. A lot, not all of them, right? But I come from a good, solid legacy of
Overwhelming majority.
Yeah, of less than productive gentlemen, So yeah,
prolific gentlemen from
Yeah.
mine, but not productive.
Yeah. But not contributive to society and all. And I get, and that dysfunction is just going to breed more dysfunction. And, you do the best with what you have and you make the best decisions. And I'm fortunate enough that I was afforded the ability to get a little bit of reprieve from that, and to kind of break that cycle up a little bit. And obviously yourself is similar, as to like, okay, like, I don't have to be a do-nothing motherfucker or a lifelong victim because things didn't go my way early. And
And I was certainly on that path for quite some time. It's actually funny, man. I was I might have been at a speakeasy last night. And somebody I know actually asked me this. She said to me, she's like, listen, I meant to ask you a question. She's like, you're pretty open about, like, your life. She's like, how are you not bothered about, like, discussing, like, the details of your childhood and how you got brought up and stuff. And I was like, man, I don't know. I've kind of always been a little bit of an open book to some degree. But at some point in your life, man, I'm 36 years old, right? Like, no one's going to feel bad for me because I had that upbringing, right? Like, I can't not show up to work or show up to work and do a bad job and be like, hey man, like, maybe you don't know how I was raised, like, nobody cares.
No,
at some point in your life, you become responsible for your own biology. Like, when you're a little kid and you're misbehaving in school, like, people afford you those graces because maybe you come from a bad, dysfunctional, home. But when you're, 27, 28 and up, no, the sympathy is gone. Nobody gives a fuck.
And it really doesn't matter. We're each accountable to sort of take care of that stuff as we start to become adults and men and women. So,
so I was telling her, like, to some degree, I think it's a personality trait where like I'm not, for whatever reason, I'm not super guarded about discussing those things. But more than anything, I was saying it's like, at some point you're responsible for your own shit. So it's like I choose to some degree to not be, like you said, a victim of those things. I still have a lot of work to do on myself, but I think I've successfully outlived to some degree my father and my mother in terms of like, I haven't gone down the path of like, I'm not a violent criminal, I'm not a drug addict. And
I think you definitely, set the bar a bit higher for the future generations, if there are any, and you kind of moved past their dysfunction, which I think is good and it's commendable. And I feel similar, in my situation. I'm lucky that I got afforded, look, I got opportunities they perhaps didn't. And, in a world that, let me become aware of these things and get some awareness around, where I was headed and second chances and things like that. So I'm fortunate, and it'll be good, man. If I do come home, be nice to spend a few weeks and decide what the next phase of life is. I think it's actually like, cause I gotta close within the next couple minutes just cause my wife's gotta take she's got an online client, but I think out of all this, and we talked about a lot of unsurety, where the dust is going to settle on all this stuff, and when everything is said and done, I'm more excited than I am not about what life's going to look like after all of this. I don't think everyone's going to wake up, but I think enough people are going to wake up that, and I think it's a slow unraveling, but I think we see how fragile the illusion of whatever we thought was life can just be taken away like that. And it's a really fragile, fleeting thing. And, 2 weeks, it was almost overnight, like everything just changed. And whatever you thought was your life isn't your life anymore. Right. Yeah. And so being appreciative of those things moving forward, I think will be a huge thing. And I think it's been a great time to take stock and a lot, not just of your personal life, but of how our lives interact and how our government operates, how we treat each other socially. I think it's a great time to take stock. If all you did was dig your trenches, dig your heels in a little bit more on how right you are, you fucking wasted a once in a lifetime opportunity. To kind of slow down and get to assess your life and how you and your role within the world, and it's a great opportunity to really look at things and see what's wasteful, what's not wasteful, how I can move forward in a more productive manner, how I can move forward in a manner that sort of lends itself to a better world. How can I move forward in a less selfish way?
The one thing I can say from all this that the most glaring lesson so far, I've been pretty apathetic, politically and socially.
Same.
On a lot of things for quite some time, because I used to have skin in the game, and I realized it was kind of like, worthless, and it's a cesspool, and it doesn't do any good, and it's kind of a waste of energy.
Sure.
This has very much put into focus the need for people to begin to take action locally. I don't think that
absolutely.
The state that you're in right now, literally the physical state that you reside in, California, you, me, New York, is in the state that it's in because of the political leadership that's been voted in.
Yeah.
The one thing that I've learned from all this is like in adhering to what the protocols of this like republic was based on from the founding fathers, Trump actually has done a good job in keeping the federal government out of governing state politics, which is how we're supposed to be set up. So if anything, I've learned that getting more involved on local political levels is probably the most important thing that anybody can do going forward. If you disagree with how things are being handled, you need to, and myself included, and this, I'm pointing the finger right here on this, I need to start to pay attention to local elections in really, if I want to affect any change in that atmosphere. I can't go saving the world, obviously. I'm not in a position where I can do that. And
Sure.
I always kind of say, like, kind of no tears for strangers kind of thing. The only way I can affect change is by being a good example to the people around me, people I care about. But now I realized that also boils down now to the state that I live in. So I have to get involved and get informed on what's going on locally around me on the political arena and social arena to some degree, because if something like this happens again, I have skin in the game, and so does everybody.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest lesson I've taken out of this, is that,
Yeah, I think it's good.
yeah, going forward, I have to pay attention and vote accordingly, not only with the press of the button for voting, but with my dollars and with my social presences. That's how you make your vote count.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Any of these companies that took corporate bailouts, don't support them anymore. You know, like all that stuff is, I think, little things that we can do. If you made a profit and took money from the government after this, there's a lot of businesses I will not put my money towards, and I would advise other people to do the same if you feel some type of way about that. You know, I think
the biggest thing you can do right now, in my opinion, like I don't necessarily need to be doing this, but I've been like ordering takeout from my local spots that I can as much.
Yeah, support local places. Sure.
I have friends that own businesses in town that I've gotten takeout from constantly, and I know them on a personal level, and gone and supported those things. And then you know, when you get that stimulus check or you get back to work, man, put that money back into where you live, because if you have any value to where you live, reinvest those dollars back into that community. And this is
cocaine.
What?
So I'm getting hookers and cocaine, son.
Well, I mean, if you want to put, like, you know,
into the local economy too. Yeah, that's
local prostitutes and drug dealers need to make a living. You know, just don't go getting that out of state cocaine. That's all.
Right. Yeah. Buy local cocaine. Buy your cocaine locally sourced. All right. With that, I gotta go. I gotta let the wife do her thing.
All right, no doubt, man.
My wife's account. That's why I gotta let her do it. Yeah. So I'll let you close this so you can record it, and I will let me know when you got the recording.
I will, man. It was good talking with you, dude. Yeah. Tell Azima I said hello, and I'm glad you guys are doing okay.
Right on, brother.
All right, guys. We're out. Later.